Developers, Gillian and Terence, isn't it, beside you? The two of you, I mean, from a developer's point of view, obviously you're suffering at the moment. In fact, the co-ownership scheme funded by the government has kind of come to an end, but indeed there's a kind of new co-ownership scheme that you're thinking, in fact, you're using at the moment.
It's not really co-ownership. Co-ownership would be government funded. This is a private scheme that Northland Developments have introduced called Wise Move. And with this scheme, it's really out there for first-time buyers who are struggling to get onto the market without assistance. So the Wise Move scheme, the owner can purchase 100% of their house, but only pay for 75% of their house now. They have no deposit to pay, they have no stamp duty to pay, and they have no rent to pay. So it is ideal for a first-time buyer to be able to be in that position to only have to go for a 75% mortgage, and the remaining 25% is owed back to Northland Developments.
Thank you, Gillian. Back to the panel then, Jerry. Who do you think is really suffering out of all of this?
Well, I have about as much sympathy for estate agents as I do for journalists when the trouble's ended. It's just my sympathy is with householders at the minute, and they're really struggling, and they're going to struggle. I think we've got a hard maybe 6 or 7 months certainly ahead of us. People are going to struggle to pay their mortgages. There are 4,000 households in Northern Ireland who every month now until the end of the year, they're coming to the end of their 2-year fixed mortgages. They're going to have to go and try and look for a new mortgage. They're going to have to go and try, you know, a lot of them just won't get mortgages because the mortgages have gone up, or they're going to be faced with a hefty rise in the money they have to pay. There's where our sympathies should be, and I think the banks have raked in so much money. They have, I mean, with stamp duty, the government has raked in so much money. Even today we saw the banks getting a £50 billion payout from the government. Now, is any of this going to come to the people who are on the receiving end of this? They've bought into the market whenever the banks were happy giving them 100% loans, and happy giving you loans when you were at 5 times your income. And now when they're struggling, I think they're being left out to dry, and that's my biggest worry. I think we have to think about the people. Everything else in life, everything else is getting very expensive. Oil is expensive, food is expensive, and there is going to be a huge rise in repossessions, and I'm not just trying to worry people. That is a fact.
Now, Caroline, you invested during the boom there. Some people would say that you added to all of this problem that has come about.
I don't
not
think
personally, but
I haven't
one
made
of many.
millions out of investment. I think I was just very, very lucky in that. I was very lucky that I managed to get on the property ladder very early, and both my husband and I have lived in properties, renovated those properties to a very high standard, made some money out of them, and bought our next home. To get back to the question of do I feel sorry for estate agents, I don't feel sorry. I've had a love-hate relationship with estate agents to begin with. I suppose I saw them as a necessary evil to help me sell my house, but I really loathed handing over that fee because I didn't think they did very much for it, to be perfectly honest. They've made a lot of money while the sun has been shining, and now I think they've got to work a little bit harder for the money.
Thank you, Caroline. Stephen, if I can turn back to you, I believe you were very successful last year. Am I right in saying you maybe were selling, for example, 40 houses, whereas this year, if I've got my facts right, it is a huge effect in all of this. Maybe we're talking about 10.
There has been a major downturn in the market, there's no doubt about that. But as I had explained previously, the market, it's not about property prices falling now. It's purely, in my opinion, to do with the credit crunch. I think the market has probably found its level, and the reason things are so bad at this minute in time is purely down to the lack of funding in the banking system. And that's the reason the market's in the position it's in at this minute in time, and no other reason for that matter. The co-ownership issue also, where co-ownership withdrew their funding, has also had an impact for first-time buyers. Quite a dire impact, in my opinion.
Indeed. I mean, that brings in our first-time buyers. We do have a few of you in the audience. Where are you? Ashley?
Hi.
Ashley, hi.
Yeah.
I mean, just how difficult is it? Tell us briefly about your situation at the moment.
Well, as a first-time buyer, it is difficult to get that first foot onto the property ladder. Despite house prices falling in the last quarter, it's difficult to get the 100% mortgage for that young person, because that's what the young people need. A lot of us wouldn't have a deposit to put
So
on
what
a
are you
house.
doing then? What are you going to do?
Currently I'm living with my parents, and I think I will be there for a good while yet until I can save up for a deposit.
And you the same?
Exactly the same. 100% mortgages just don't come along anymore, so they don't. To get a 20% deposit for a brand new house is almost unrealistic, just starting out of university.
Do you see yourself living with your folks for the next few years as well?
For foreseeable future, yes.
This is really ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, you know, I think if householders need help in Britain, the lead story in the Mirror tomorrow is about the Chancellor calling all the money lenders into Downing Street to tell them to be good. I think it was asking them to be generous with people who are struggling to pay their debts. But if people in Britain, I think, need help, people in Northern Ireland need help doubly. So our house prices rose so suddenly and then dropped so suddenly, and when people do come to the end of their mortgage period, a lot of people will be in negative equity, and I think that's where our politicians and I haven't heard anybody really speaking out on behalf of ordinary people who are they will suffer over the next 6 months, and it's something that we know is going to happen, and yet nobody seems to be taking any action to try and prevent it.
I mean, what does the future hold for us here?
I think what's going to be is that banks make monies in recessions, because when people are in debt, that's what they want. They don't want us to pay our credit card off every month and pay our bills every month. They want us to actually borrow more. What we've actually got is this major squeeze, which is now going to be a very big global squeeze. Well, I think we don't want to be you know, we can cause a lot of fear for people, but we've got to realise, you know, that there's things that governments can do. You know, if we have people having their homes repossessed, you know, that there's stresses around that leads to family breakup, etc. And I think it's very difficult sometimes that we think about the economy, sort of the economy of the housing market in very technical ways, but we forget the human face. You know, that this does lead to, you know, people on the street. It does lead to the breakup of the family. It does lead to people who are in perpetual debt. You know, students, people of our generation who left university had full grants, etc. We now have students who are leaving university with £20,000 and £30,000 of debt. They're then, you know, going to move into the housing market where they're going to end up back with their parents. So when you thought you got rid of them, you know, they're back again, and I think that's a big social change that we're going to have.
Sonia, you agree?
The last Bank of England rate cut was not passed on by the mortgage lenders to the customer. Why not? I mean, they've made so much money in the past. I mean, that should have been instantly passed on to all the homeowners so they could benefit from it. They certainly put it up quick enough when the rate goes up. Why not do it as equally quickly when it comes down?
Here, here. Maurice Gray, where are you? There you are in the back row. You deal with new property. I mean, how hard is it? Are you Maurice? Sorry. How hard is the new property then to shift?
Yeah, there's good news on the horizon, because house builders have reacted to the situation. House builders in the last 6 months have brought prices down between 15 and 25%.
Well, they've had to, yes. They
have. We reacted to the market. The resale market hasn't moved down as much, but I think it still has a bit to go. There's great value there for young buyers like these in the new market. The equity share scheme, which we're leading the way with, is a great opportunity. You can buy a £200,000 house for £150,000. The £50,000 that you're not buying, you don't pay any rent or interest.
But where does this stop? I mean, are we just going to wait and wait and wait until property drops and drops and drops even further?
No, I think we've reached this level now, certainly in the new market, maybe not so much in the resale market, definitely in the new market. The builders have led the way, and there's great value out there at the moment.
Yes, yourself.
A number of the panel have referred to the social costs as a result of the housing crisis, and in fact the Minister, Margaret Ritchie, made a very significant statement a couple of months ago called the New Housing Agenda. Now, in that she announced a package to help people in the affordability crisis, and that package briefly was some 5,000 more new houses, social houses, over the next 3 years. Also, the co-ownership scheme has not ended. It has been oversubscribed for the time being, but more money is likely to flow into that in the coming months. But in addition to that, the upper limits of the 225,000, it's proposed that those will be abolished. They're also proposing that rather than access it at 50%, you access it at 25%. There is also an empty home strategy to bring into use potentially 4,000 empty homes. Also a review of the Housing Executive's right to buy, where again, not only can you buy it outright, but you can have an equity share at 25%. And finally, there was also reference to a government-sponsored mortgage rescue scheme. So there is a recognition that the public sector has a role to play in this affordability issue.
There is hope, basically. There is hope. Possibly.
Absolutely.
OK, we have to leave it there. Now, housing, obviously, always a hot issue. And I believe your texts and emails are flooding in. Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, indeed, a very emotive subject indeed. Lots of you contacting us with your thoughts on the property situation here in Northern Ireland. Clive from Bangor says, I hope house prices here continue to fall as they're too high at the moment. Christine in Belfast says, estate agents were responsible for the rocketing house prices. They now get all they deserve. I have